Okay, folks, it is 8:30 a.m., which means it is time for another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. And we are here to talk about transportation. And the update that we'll receive will be focused on ST3 light rail. So please take a moment to, number one, get yourselves organized. If you would like to highlight who you are and who you're with in the chat, and welcome our amazing and esteemed panel for today. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Next slide. All right, I am Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, as you all may know. Please remember to ask questions in the chat. Continue to remain muted as we go through the initial portion of this process. And then towards the end of the presentations, we'll have an opportunity for you all to ask questions. And we're just excited to get to this point. So let me highlight our esteemed panelists. Next slide, please. Okay. Today, we are pleased to have Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers with us today. Executive Summers, thank you for joining us this morning.
Great to be here.
And along those sides, we also have the outstanding City of Everett Mayor Cassie Franklin this morning. Mayor Cassie Franklin, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
We also have the outstanding mayor of the city of Lynnwood, Mayor Christine Frizzell, and she is with us. Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, Gary. Thank you.
And we also have an outstanding contingent from Sound Transit. We have Chief Executive Officer Julie Tim. Julie, we are very thankful to have you here.
Thank you.
We have Erik, who is actually the North Corridor Development Director and also focuses on Everett Link Extension. And then we have with us, last but not least, Erik, thank you for joining us. We have another Erik, Ashlie-Vinke, who is actually the Government and Community Relations Manager of the North Corridor. So folks, we have an amazing group here to talk about our transportation needs here in Snohomish County and the city of Everett, Lynnwood area. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this off to our outstanding executive, Dave Summers.
Great. Thank you, Gary, and thank everybody for being here this morning. We really have been looking forward to this opportunity to talk about Sound Transit, the state of the program, where we've been and where we've headed. I'm going to ask Julie, our new CEO, to say a few words here in a second, but it's the overview of the presentation this morning is I'll give some background history of Sound Transit 1, 2, and 3. Mayor Frizzell will talk about the progress on the Lynnwood Link, which is an ST2 project. And then Mayor Franklin will talk about Everett Link, which is the ST3 package. And then we hope to have a lot of time for questions at the end, because that's where I think the best information flow can happen. So CEO Tim, would you like to say a few words?
I would. Thank you so much. First, it is an honor to be up here. And literally, I am up here. I believe that Sound Transit serves the region. And so I have a commitment to make sure that I spend a significant amount of time inside the entire region. I've gone out of Tacoma a couple of times. I've been over to the east side to Bellevue. This is my first trip up to the north. And I have to tell you, I took transit the whole way up. I had the 21, which was a King County Metro, got on the link, took the 521, which is a Sound Transit Express up here. And I was so enthralled, and I think that's the right word, with what I was seeing on the way up on multiple levels, that I literally missed my stop. And I am all the way in Everett. I was supposed to stop, I think, in Lynnwood so I could take this. So I'm at the Everett Transit Station right now, and I feel like I left West Seattle in the fall and I stepped out here in the winter. So I had a little bit of hat head as I put my gloves and my hat on because it is cold out there with the snow on the mountains. But part of my trip up here, one of the things that I was watching was the level of ridership on the system, which was impressive, seeing that it was a reverse commute. The level of traffic going the other direction, which was also impressive, considering that many of the parking rides seemed to be close to capacity, and there were still plenty of cars on the road and plenty of buses that were filled going south. And watching the construction as I was coming up on the transit system, while I'm up here, I will be getting a tour of the system here, what's going on, an update. I believe in getting boots on the ground, but sound transit is more than just about the light rail. We do the express, and we have the sounder, which I'm also looking forward to riding up here. The reverse commute coming this way is very difficult in the sounder because of single tracking. But we're more than all that. We're our connections to our community transit and our Everett transit partners, where that connectivity in the region is what provides access to all the resources, to the healthcare and the education and the jobs and the housing. It's all interconnected. So my passion about leading transit isn't just about building light rail, it's about creating those opportunities for access and reducing the barriers to access for all of our resources. I'm going to stop there. That's a little bit about who I am and my trip up here. There's some background noise. I'm going to mute it so you don't hear some of the other coffee goers here. I've got my coffee for the coffee chat, and thank you so much for the warm, chilly welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Julie, and welcome to Snohomish County and to the region. We're really happy to have you here and excited about the future. So anyway, I'm going to start off here, a little bit of background. So the slide you see now outlines the Sound Transit District and the sub areas. You see the different colors there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the sub areas in a second, but really what the region is trying to achieve with the Sound Transit investments in the whole system, really four things: keeping our economy growing by efficiently moving people and freight, to making progress on environmental sustainability by giving commuters really more and better mass transit options for getting around the region. Another goal is to prepare for the continuing growth and increase in population in the central Puget Sound in the future. And also, lastly, making sure we're building a system that's really equitable and accessible by everybody in the region. Mass transit is vitally important for many people and gives people a great option to get to work and to move around the region. And so we've seen this in other parts of the country and the world, the importance of mass transit. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. We have a district that a transit district that encompasses parts of 3 counties, as you see here. Not the entire county, and we'll get more into that, but together the whole region really encompasses 40% of the state's population. Think of that, 40% of everybody that lives in Washington state is within this transit boundary. We've got 52 cities. The district covers 1,080 square miles, and we've got over 3 million residents in the district. And again, that's over 40% of the district. We're expecting the district population to grow by about 800,000 by 2040. So the growth projections are for continued growth, and every indication is that will be achieved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the board. It's a 18-member board of local officials, elected officials, and the State Secretary of Transportation. And before I move off this slide, I mentioned a second ago about the sub areas in different colors. Part of the program that's been developed at Sound Transit, initially connecting and building out the spine of the system was a goal, and it still is a goal. But also there was an idea of sub-area equity put in place. And so there's a balancing act about the revenue generated within each one of these sub areas and how the progress is made and how that system is built out. So it's a bit of a juggling act. Building out the spine is not 100% compatible with sub-area equity. So there's a tension there that the board members are always dealing with. So next slide. Okay, so in terms of the board, myself, Mayor Franklin, and Mayor Frizzell are the Snohomish County representatives on the board. There are 10 representatives from King County and 4 from Pierce County. So these are based on population. And then there's an additional seat that's held by the Washington State Secretary of Transportation. If you do the math here, I know many of you are familiar with this board composition, 3 from Snohomish County, 4 from Pierce, that's 7, and we still have 10 from King County. So there's a bit of a difference between the counties, and that just really reflects the boundaries that I showed you a minute ago. Next slide. So Sound Transit was created by the state legislature. The authority to develop the district was a legislative act, and major changes to the program have to go through the legislature. We are a creature of the legislature. 1996 was the first vote. It's called Sound Move, and that consisted really of 21 new light rail stations, the start of the system, and 82 miles of Sounder commuter rail from Tacoma to Everett, and 18 Sound Transit Express bus routes that have connected the region too. We've had an express bus route from Everett down to Seattle for quite some time. That will be changing already. In 2008, Sound Transit 2 package was approved by the voters, added 25 new link stations, light rail stations, more Sounder trips, more heavy rail trips, added some parking and stations and access improvements in the south part of the system, and expanded express bus expansion. And finally, in 2016, the voters approved the ST3 package, which will add, when completed, 37 new link stations, 3 new bus rapid transit routes, Sounder North stations, parking and access improvements, and Sounder South track signal and platform improvements. So all the taxi programs were approved by the voters in these 3 votes within the district. And these are the major elements in the package, essentially the package that Sound Transit Board and Sound Transit as an agency has an obligation to deliver. Next slide, please. Okay. And a overview of the entire system from Tacoma to Everett, 116 miles total of link light rail, 91 miles of Sounder commuter rail, 45 miles of bus rapid transit when ST3 is completed. So the current program that's underway is $15 billion in active construction that's going on right now. And CEO Tim saw some of that as she was headed up to Lynnwood this morning. And we're going to be tripling light rail service from 22 to 62 miles of light rail service. In the next few years, we've got 25 new stations on their way, including the first light rail in Snohomish County with the Lynnwood Link, which we're all really excited about. In total, we'll have 116 miles of light rail, bus rapid transit serving north, east, and south of Lake Washington, extended Sounder South line serving up to 40% more passengers than it does now. Really working on improving access to stations with new parking spaces and miles of bike and pedestrian paths, really making those stations as accessible as possible. There's also a number of transit-oriented development projects going on along the line, which are intended to create working and walkable neighborhoods near and around stations. That's a critical part of the program, is transit-oriented development. And we hope to achieve with this greenhouse gas emission saving 793,000 tons of carbon emissions per year. So environmental benefits as well. Next slide. One thing I wanted to really stress about, and a lot of the public doesn't understand, is the boundary of the district, particularly in Snohomish County, does not take in the whole county. Goes from Lynnwood up and takes in Everett, but East County, North County are not part of the district. And I believe that would take an act of the legislature, probably some sort of, I really haven't researched it much, but some sort of significant annexation and vote would have to occur to really increase these boundaries. The result of this, though, is our sub area in Snohomish County is really the smallest sub area in the system, which puts us a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of the revenue we generate and the population we serve. Next slide. So we're starting to now focus a little bit more on Snohomish County part of the system. You see here the Lynnwood Link Extension, which will go from Lynnwood up to Everett, BRT on 405, linking into Lynnwood Transit Center and City Center. And got to stress really that Sound Transit's a critical part of this, but we're working very closely with our other transit partners, including Community Transit and Everett Transit, to really make sure that the systems, the light rail system, the express bus system, the heavy rail system links well with Community Transit and Everett efforts here, so that at the end of the day, we're coordinated as to the maximum extent possible to build an entire system that really serves the entire region. So we're looking forward in just 2 years really to seeing the opening of Lynnwood Link, and that's going to be a major part of the major achievement, finally getting into Everett. And if you've been down to Lynnwood, you've seen some of the things going on there. So with that, I'll be back in a few minutes, but I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Frizzell to talk a little bit about what's going on with Lynnwood Link. Mayor?
Great, thank you, Dave. There is a lot going on in Lynnwood. We've talked about the Lynnwood Link Extension, but I just want to make sure everybody realizes that it's not just Lynnwood, but it's also Mount Lake Terrace, it's also Shoreline, all coming online at the same time, which will be exciting. By 2035, which seems like a long way away, but you know, if we think back 10 years, it doesn't seem that long till we get there. And we're expecting 17,000 commuters by 2035. Let's let that sink in for just a minute. And that means that the 2,000 parking lots that Sound Transit has allocated will not be enough for everyone to drive their vehicles and hop on the light rail. And as Dave mentioned, we are in a great partnership with Community Transit. And as some of you know, we recently got Zip cars that will take people that first and last mile to and from the transit center, as well as other places around our city core. So we're also in the middle of our Orange Line development, which takes people to the transit center. Transit centers can only go so far, and we don't want to just have parking spaces for people. We really want to encourage the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions and get people moving to where they want to be. Next slide, please. So along with Sound Transit, we're looking at having 2 stations in Lynnwood. Sound Transit 2, many of you have seen the end of the line for now. They're on 44th and 200th. But because we did a lot of advanced planning, we're also now developing our city center. And with that, we're working in partnership with Alderwood Mall. I can't stress enough the idea of knowing where these stations are going to be as they come through our cities, because it gives us an opportunity and an obligation to use that space and time to increase housing for underserved communities in particular. Next slide, please. As we talk about urban density, you know, people want to be close to transit, so we want to be having housing available for folks. again, working in partnership, developers want to be developing in Lynnwood. It gives us an opportunity for housing, employment, and many amenities that we just didn't have the opportunity to take a look at before. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits, as I talked about, we need housing. And these are two projects. Connect is the bottom left. I take that back. That is not Connect. That is Ember. Connect is already up and running. We opened it nearly a year ago. But we're working with developers that are interested in income restricted properties. They know that people that are writing Sound Transit may have some financial considerations. And it's great that they're partnering with us to provide for folks. Next slide, please. This is a vision of the lower slide is a vision of an 18-acre site that right now is from 196th to 200th and from 48th to 44th. And we worked with Northline Village folks back in 2019 to create a 25-year development plan. And all of this is built around Sound Transit and Sound Transit getting people to where they need to be. And people are catching the vision along with us. Next slide, please. A lot of this started for us back in 1991, 1993 with Lynnwood Legacy, which was a group of over 100 community members that started the conversation back then as to how do we make Lynnwood become better through transit, using the opportunities that transit brings us to create a new and reimagined downtown core and push density out towards the transit areas. So the time to plan is now and continue planning. We hired a planning manager that focuses on our core. And he's done great things. He's been reaching out to developers. So let's not pass up that opportunity as we talk about Sound Transit 3 coming into play. Next slide, please. And that's it. I thought I had another slide there. But as we talk about the Everett Link Extension, just remember, it does, a lot of people think it ends in Lynnwood, but our city gets torn up again in just a few years as we move on up to Everett, and that will take a lot of the load off of those 17,000 commuters running out of the Lynnwood station, because they'll be able to hop on further north on the line. And now I'm not sure who I turn this over to, but I'm thinking it's Mayor Franklin.
That's right. Thank you, Mayor Frizzell. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to start and just cover the Everett Link Extension stations and alignments. This slide that you're going to be looking at here is the entire Everett Link Extension project area, which is about 16 miles of alignment. 4 of those stations are in Everett, with 1 provisional, not yet funded station. So the goal of Sound Transit is to connect to both population and employment centers. And we are working to connect Sound Transit effectively to the tens of thousands of jobs in Southwest Everett Industrial Center. I did see there was a question in the chat, hey, with the changing aerospace jobs, is this still necessary? And actually, aerospace industry is growing. So it is absolutely necessary. I just saw a report from Boeing this morning of additional orders that are coming through that will be built in our manufacturing center. So it's a very important area to serve. It gets cars off the road, brings workers from the south coming to Everett. I think often we look at it as if we're all trying to get to Seattle, but there's a ton of people trying to get to Everett, to this job center. And it also will be serving Payne Field, which is growing and obviously a very important regional asset. For me, I live and work downtown, so I'm very much looking forward to getting light rail to downtown Everett. But it's important to think about this Everett Link as not only about getting to downtown. The southwest area of Everett has been one of the most historically underinvested areas in Everett, and light rail is going to change that. So I want to focus briefly and specifically on how Everett Link will lift South Everett and empower our residents in that area with additional opportunities. So for many years, we've been asking the question, how can Sound Transit best serve Everett? And the answer has always been, of course, we've got to serve Boeing and aerospace because it's the largest manufacturing center in the state. And I believe it's the largest job center in the entire Sound Transit alignment. But it will also serve the residents of South Everett. Serving South Everett with several light rail stations is really the best strategy to invest in the long-term health of our city and county. As many of you know, in the past months, we've asked again whether to run Everett Link up I-5 or Evergreen Way. And as the team researched that, the answer came back again as a resounding no. The I-5 and Evergreen alignments would eliminate stations in Snohomish County, which none of us want. It would cause the operations and maintenance facility to be really poorly located, and that's an important facility to maintain the system. We'd have less riders. It would certainly serve less historically underserved, diverse communities. It would spur less population growth and create less jobs over time, and it wouldn't connect again to the largest job center in the entire system. What those alignments would do is eliminate hundreds of millions of public investment and billions in private investment in South Everett. So that's why I know my fellow board members are very happy that those alignments were rejected so that we can move forward together. And I also want to address, I know some residents in South Everett are worried and are asking what's going to be left of our community after light rail comes in. I can tell you I pledge to you, and I know my fellow board members do here on this panel, that Sound Transit is going to work to enhance and enable and empower South Everett community and our residents. The link is going to provide opportunities for this part of our community. We're already working with Sound Transit in the county to avoid the track running down Casino Road. We knew that was a problem area that we definitely didn't want to split that neighborhood. And so we have diverted that part of the system to go on along 526 rather than down Casino Road. We're going to be working to identify all the affordable housing in the area so that when the stations open, we are protecting that affordable housing and working to ensure that there's more affordable housing, not less. We're obviously going to be working closely with the neighborhood and organizations in this part of our city, making neighborhood parks that serve the community, and ensuring that we have 2 light rail stations on Casino Road, along with all the wonderful elements in between that will really serve the residents of this neighborhood, and they'll have the full benefit of the transit system. The next slide you'll see is how Everett is going to be crisscrossed with transit. Sound Transit stations are shown with half-mile circles. Community transit, BRT routes, are shown with quarter-mile stripes along its green and blue routes, and Everett Transit shows quarter-mile stripes along the routes 2, 7, 8, and 12. So you see transit basically all over this slide, and that's truly a transit-oriented community. It's transit-oriented South Everett. It's not just going to be a couple small areas of development around stations, but really this is an area of our city that in the future you won't need a car. You might not want one. Everything will be close in walking distance. You can walk or bike, and you could hop on Sound Transit and get to WSU or UW. And obviously you can get to the job center, which are going to be plentiful in this area. So this is a very important area of our community. And I think most importantly, we are all going to work to make sure that to preserve the rich character of this very important part of our city. So that's what we, the 3 of us, are going to be working to achieve on the Everett Link Extension. I also want to cover one of the big details involved with keeping the trains clean and safe, which is the operation and maintenance facility. I guess we've been working to find the least painful location for the facility. It's a big facility, 50 to 60 acres, but it is a really important facility, critical for the maintenance of the system. So for the OMF North, there are 8 potential sites that are being evaluated in level 1. The 4 sites that are shown in purple will be evaluated in level 2. And at this early stage, the primary drivers of what we're looking at is minimizing any job or business displacements, as well as avoiding any sites that have major topographic or other development challenges. They're, again, very large facilities, and so there will be a lot of challenges in building them, and we want to find the best facility, best area to build the facility in our community. And so with that, I wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions and answers, but I'm going to hand it back over to Executive Summers as well. I think he has a few more words before we move on to Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Franklin. And I'm going to go quickly also because I want to make sure we have plenty of time. But the next slide, please. Yeah. Some of the alternatives that are being considered, and you'll have a chance to weigh in on through the environmental impact process and others. There's two alternatives really at Ashway Station, one on the west side and another on the east side, and you see those pictured here. This is really a key connection point for transit, as Mayor Franklin mentioned, so we want to be careful and get the right solution here. And also we're planning in this entire area for future transit-oriented development. Next slide. Similarly, at the Mariner Station, which is unincorporated urban Snohomish County, there's three alternatives. They're all on the west side. You can see, if you know this area, it's very close to Economic Alliance. Different impacts to neighborhoods, different access issues that are being considered. But again, these are three alternatives that are moving forward. And again, the county is doing comprehensive plan updates to accommodate future growth in this area. Next slide. Not directly part of Sound Transit, but Snohomish County has been for some time now doing what we call the light rail communities project, which is really thinking about how we improve our transportation corridors, particularly the east-west corridors, county roads that tie into the station areas and future to build a network that really works. We've got some significant challenges with county roads, and we've known that for some time. And so we've been doing this planning, and this just highlights for the corridors that will connect in the future. Next slide. So this is the schedule moving forward. We are currently in the planning stage. See the star at the top there. We're developing and talking about alternatives to be considered in the environmental review process. We will move on then to the design stage and finally to construction. As we go through the process, there'll be significant opportunity for public comment at each level and in each stage. This is really an important process, but over the next year or two, the environmental impact process is very conducive to public input and process, and then a final alignment will be decided by the Sound Transit Board and will go into design and finally construction. So I would like Erik Widstrand, Sound Transit, to he's going to say a few words about public comment and involvement in future. Erik?
Hey, thank you, Executive Summers. So here's a reminder of our schedule through level 2. So we'll be into the first half of 2023. Starting in December and into the new year, we expect to have 2 meetings with our elected leadership group to talk about level 2 findings and review station designs. We're also going to meet with our community advisory group. That'll be tomorrow evening, actually, and then again in December or January to share initial findings with them. In January, we'll launch public scoping to hear from the community about the level 2 alternatives. The community advisory group will then meet in early 2023 after the scoping period to develop the recommendations for the elected leadership group. In the first quarter next year, the elected leadership group will meet to make recommendations to the Sound Transit Board about the preferred alternative and other alternatives to move into the environmental review. At that meeting, we'll also share the recommendations from the community advisory group and feedback from the public that we heard during scoping. In early Q2 2023, Sound Transit Board will make a recommendation on the alternatives to move into environmental review. I'll hand it over to Gary Clark to facilitate questions you might have.
All right, thank you all for diving in on these topics. Folks in the room, if you'd like to ask some questions to our elected officials and those who are tied to Sound Transit, this is an opportunity to do so. I do see we did have an initial question, and we'll take down the screen, and so we can connect everybody's space for everyone on here. First question that was given was pertaining to changing job counts in aerospace. What is the economic justification for the ST3 loop to Southwest Everett? And I think Mayor Cassie, you had started to allude to that answer or comments there at least. So I'll leave it open for you.
Could I just add something to that? The Everett Boeing plant is Boeing's largest facility. They continue to build airplanes there. They continue to get orders. And I know it's part of their future planning and thinking. But beyond that, the whole ecosystem around Payne Field, around aerospace, we've got some just really incredible new companies, startup companies, but the whole aerospace and advanced manufacturing ecosystem is alive and well in Southeast Everett, and will continue to be. And this ST3 and ST system is an important part of making sure that that is a job center now and into the future. And as Mayor Franklin said, this is not about just building a transportation system to get people in and out of Seattle. This is a transportation system for Snohomish County and for the region, and to give access to the rest of the region to Snohomish County. So I think we need to change our thinking about that. So.
Yeah, and I just thank you, Executive. I just want to add, this is as he said, the largest manufacturing center in Boeing's largest manufacturing center. It's the largest manufacturing center in the system. It's the largest job center. I think someone else had asked, well, what about, people working from home? That could impact parts of the system that are serving more of the tech communities in King County. But honestly, Snohomish County, the jobs that we have here are in-person jobs. You can't build an airplane from home. You can't develop all of these systems from home. You actually have to be on site. So this is an area where people will continue to commute to work every day. And so making sure that we have access and can get some of those cars off the road is very important. And I know that there are many employees and folks that are working in Boeing and aerospace that have asked questions and are excited to see the system come into their community and get out of their vehicles and commute via Sound Transit.
Any other comments on that question before we move on?
I just think our economic development planning for the future is very much encouraging advanced manufacturing, and our kind of one of our slogans is we build things here, we still build things here, and we do. And as Mayor Franklin said, that's very much a part of our future, and why companies are interested in relocating here. We're out of space at Payne Field. We have a waiting line for people to build facilities. You've seen North County fill up, or the Cascade Industrial Center fill up very quickly, but it's because there's a culture and an ecosystem of manufacturing here, and that we're going to continue to emphasize that. And there's no reason to think it won't continue, because things don't get built over Zoom meetings.
That's awesome. Okay, so we have an additional question here if no one else wanted to chime in on that question. This is tied to Doug asked about having projections for ridership. Have they been adjusted to account for the surge in work from home and continually increasing hybrid models of partial work from home and partial commute? And so he's saying that he's one of those who only go to the office 2 and 3 days per week anymore. So any comments on that?
Maybe Julie or Erik, do you want to talk about how Sound Transit is dealing with this?
Sure, if you want me to take that, Julie, I can do that. But yeah, we work with Sound Transit, works with Puget Sound Regional Council on forecasts. And yeah, with a once in a century pandemic and the kind of change in work status from a lot of people where they're working from, that definitely is something we're looking at and we'll continue to evaluate as we look at forecasts going forward. I will say, as one of those people who's in the office 3 days a week, and when I am going to work, I'm taking bus to light rail, and the train is full on those days when I'm going in. So that's good to see it returning. But yes, whether having people in 3 days a week or 5 days a week, we want to make sure we're doing accurate and as accurate as we can be for forecasting 20 years out.
Can I add to that, if I may? And that's absolutely true. We are definitely seeing a return of commuters to transit. It's a slow return, but they are coming back. And as this region grows, there will be more people who come to this area, and maybe they're going to come in and work 2 days or 3 days a week out of the office. But as they come in, they'll be using transit. More important, though, is a kind of an existential question that transit has been facing for the past 2 years of who do we serve? I've been riding transit here since I got here for about 2 months. And what I'm seeing is more and more people using transit, not just for their commute. They're using it for their midday lunch break. They're using it to go do shopping. They're using it for entertainment. They're using it for the games on the weekends. And more people are using it in that way. And we're seeing a shift from just commuter peaks to a level use of the system all day long. So yes, we need to update the ridership numbers, but we need to continually watch how people are shifting their patterns of using our network, whether it's cars or buses or light rail. And those will continue to shift as we come out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other thoughts before we move on to another question? All right, seeing none, there's another comment here from Brad, and he's specifically asking about if there's going to be any studies or if they are already underway documenting the impact of light rail. So highlights Lynnwood, light rail, and Terminus community. And so are there any thoughts there to highlight any studies that are underway?
I'll start. Brad, we're just entering into the environmental impact assessments and process, and the alternatives that will be finally studied will be kind of chosen early next year by the Sound Transit Board. Then they'll go into a NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act process, for studying the impacts of the different alternatives, receiving public input about them. Then there'll be a final environmental impact statement. I think most of you are familiar with environmental impact statement processes. So we're at the beginning of that process. And anybody else want to add to that?
I can jump in and say that I've got a 25+ career in transportation and transit. Anything that's going to require federal funding, or most places and states where they have SEPA, state environmental laws, require environmental documentation before you go into any major construction. And I have a love-hate relationship with the process. The love part is that it allows us to really look at those impacts and really understand how we are impacting and benefiting the communities that we're serving. I have a hate relationship with them because they can drag on. And we're always looking for ways to streamline the process. But by going through it, we're able to have the community outreach. We're able to bring in the communities that we're going through, and really make sure that the values of the system align with the values of the community as we look at alternatives. So yes, we absolutely do impact environmental, social, traffic as part of our study process, and those are underway or beginning now.
Gary, I see Rick has his hand up. Does Rick have is it okay to?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Just a quick word on the transportation impacts. These projects are evaluated at multiple stages: at the system planning phase, the project planning phase, and in the project delivery phase. And the federal process has been managed over the past 2 decades really to focus on how these investments perform in delivering and attracting new users to the system. And the way we do it in this region is we look at a number of factors, the price of parking, the travel time, the service reliability within the corridor. Julie referenced the traffic headed southbound this morning on the way up, and I saw the same thing as I came up. Those are all factors that go into assessing how an investment like this will change and perform within the county. And on all those measures, there's no doubt that these investments will improve the quality of the commute in the corridor with a faster, more reliable, higher capacity system, attract substantial new riders into the system. So I'm just speaking to the transportation impacts narrowly. You can look broadly at the land use impacts throughout the region further south in King County on the east side, where these investments have already come into service. And there's lots of pluses and there's also challenges. related to land use changes that occur when these investments are made. But it's a very thorough examination to justify the investment on the front end, and then a long series of problem solving studies along the way to figure out how to do it right. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you for joining, Rick. I appreciate that. Was there anyone else on the panel that wanted to chime in on that comment? No? Okay. I see another question tied to Southwest Everett. Has there been any outreach to the workforce there to confirm their interest in using light rail? Does anyone want to dive in on?
Yeah, I don't know if we've actually conducted a full outreach, but I have been in conversations with some of the companies there and some of the employees of those companies, and they are interested in light rail. They're very passionate about getting light rail to their facilities because, I mean, 35,000 people going to and from there every day is a lot. So I think that there's a high number, but we haven't, I don't think, at least we as board members haven't done a formal evaluation of who and how many are going to be using the system, whether Sound Transit has or yet or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we've been not only to the aerospace community, but also community groups along the corridor. We've been out, had staff out at farmers markets, various community events. We had staff out at a pet adoption day last week. I don't think our staff took home any cats, but it was still a successful event. We're out talking to the public, and yeah, we've had conversations with Boeing, and we're going to continue having conversations with the stakeholders along the corridor. I think our community advisory group is a very diverse group made up of residents and employees along the corridor. I think we have a Boeing representative on that community advisory group. So this conversation is starting with our partners in the community. It's been ongoing. And we want to get people with scoping. That's when it's really important for us to get the public input on these alternatives that we're studying. And yeah, that'll help inform our elected leadership group and the board on what decisions we study further in the environmental phase. And we want to make sure that we're keeping the public involved in the environmental phase on what those studies find and how we keep moving forward as we progress through the environmental process and into design.
If I can add to that, I think we talk about these projects a lot of times with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, thinking as we all want that they'll be built tomorrow. But the workforce that's out there is not necessarily the workforce that's going to be out there when light rail comes. And when we look and we talk to the companies and their investment in their workforce, having that access to transit, having that access to subsidized fares that the companies pay for their employees actually attracts a lot of people to their job, and people make choices about where to live and move into the region based on their availability to access that future system. So while it is very important for us to understand the desires of people who work there now, it's almost more important for us to understand how we're going to generate the future workforce that's going to be there in 15 years.
All right, we have good time for a few more questions before we get some closing remarks. Mayor Cassie, there's been quite a few questions in the chat about South Everett, so I thought maybe we just give you a moment to speak on walkability and those things, however you'd like to speak on that. So.
Yeah, I saw that question in the chat. First of all, there is a lot of folks that are already walking in this area. It's a very densely populated area of our community, and it's actually densely populated by a lot of people that rely on public transportation. So we have a lot of people coming and going. I think one of the biggest benefits of bringing Sound Transit into this community is the millions of dollars in public investment helps us really take better care of that community. But then that we'll have the billions of dollars in private investment, which we really haven't had yet in this community, right? So when those private investors come in and they're building, a new affordable housing project, they're also building sidewalks. They're also building, commercial space on the ground floor that leads to kind of a more walkable, livable part of the city. And those are things that are missing from parts of the community right now. So just the fact of bringing light rail in is actually going to work to ensure a more walkable, vibrant Southwest Everett than we've been able to afford in the past. So this is the way to do it. But it is already a very dense population there, and they are on foot a lot. So.
Yes. Executive Summers, or I think you're muted.
I just want to add on around, I mentioned this earlier, around the 2 stations that are in unincorporated county. We've been doing transit-oriented planning. Actually, we identified these areas in 2001 as potential future transit centers. And so we're making sure that our zoning and programs will maximize density and transit-oriented types of developments there also.
And if I could just jump onto that question regarding walkability. Many of you know that we have our 196th Street project going on, and a big part of that is making wider sidewalks, making it more walkable. As we talk about getting people to and from the transit center, we're in the middle of putting in a new trail, Spreader Creek Trail, so that people can, again, walk. And it's not that we're forcing anybody out of their cars, but we're seeing that other people, a lot of people want to be walkable. I think Cassie mentioned earlier about leaving their cars at home, or maybe not even having a car. That is a trend, Julia, as we look towards the future. Many people talk to me about walk, or bike. And that's another great part of the system too. So great considerations to be making right now, so that when those developers come, we already have our zoning set up for the wider sidewalks, for those stipulations that we want to see in our city coming forward.
Erik, I'm sorry, Executive Summers, go ahead.
No, go ahead. If there's more on this topic, I was going to talk about the airport for a second. But go ahead.
Okay, seeing none, Executive Summers, you have the floor.
Yeah, several questions about Painfield and the terminal. Light rail will not directly serve the terminal, but the light rail is the spine. It's going to be the spine of the system. And once we decide exactly where the stations are and the OMF and timing and the rest of it, we can start to plan a system that gets people to and from the terminal. There's a process going on now statewide at looking at future airport capacity in Puget Sound region, and the direction we're headed, and I think which is the right one, is that Painfield will continue to be an important part of a regional system. We're not going to be the next SeaTac, but we can play a role in providing really outstanding service and probably expanded service at Painfield. One thing to keep in mind, and weighs heavily on me, is that this study was done just before the pandemic by the state, but Painfield has 3 times the economic benefit to the region and to the state that SeaTac does. And that's because of the manufacturing that goes on there, general aviation, and now commercial air. It's an amazingly diverse airport with a lot of opportunities, and that's really reflected in the tremendous economic value that Painfield has. And it would be kind of silly to give away manufacturing and our job center for just commercial air service, which frankly would be an economic loser for us. But it can expand. So I would expect you'd see expanded service there in the future, and a system to get people from the light rail to the terminals.
All right, well, we've had a wealth of information shared with us today. Lots of folks on the coffee chat at about 1:50 or so. And I think now's the time to hear some closing remarks from our elected officials and Sound Transit. So Executive Summers, I'm gonna throw it back to you.
Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And we really wanted an opportunity to talk about this. And I see this as a start of a process. We are going into the environmental impact review process. And so there's a lot of issues that need to be talked about and resolved. Casino Road's one of them, the airport, there's just a number of issues. So let's look at this as the start of a dialogue on these issues and try to do this more often. Mayor Franklin?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciated everyone's questions. I also wanted to thank you for being here this morning and listening to us and learning about the system. We are so early in this process, which is great. You know, it's great for us to be having these conversations this early because we're not even, there's no construction happening in Everett, but for us to be really digging in and thinking about where and how to best serve the community, it's important we have those conversations now. And so trust that we are going to be working very closely with the communities that are going to be served by light rail as we site those locations, design the system to make sure that it really positively impacts all our residents and obviously everyone that's coming and going to our beautiful city. So thank you and look forward to further conversations. And I'll hand it over to Mayor Frizzell.
Muted.
One day. Oh, well, thank you everyone for your interest, not just in seeing light rail come, but really embracing it and seeing it for what it is. There's a lot of opportunity, as I mentioned before, and obligation to use this for our communities in the best way possible, whether that is by creating more retail space, creating jobs, creating housing. Those all play into each of our communities. And I just encourage you to stay active in the process, make your voices heard. Thank you. Back to you, Gary.
All right, and Julie, would you like to chime in with some final thoughts?
Always. First, I want to thank you and thank the board for inviting me to be here. It really is an honor. I hope to come up here more often as our projects open up and as they're being planned. I will say that these are, again, generational investments that once they're put in the ground can really do a lot to support the economy and the communities that they serve. But before they're even built, they do a lot of economic generation. There was a question online about what are we doing for all the construction? Construction will create hundreds to thousands of jobs and billions of dollars of economic revenue in and of itself. Don't quote me on that because I'm sure I got it wrong. But the point being is that we are actively engaged with reaching out to the community to make sure that not only are the big players in the construction industry coming into support, but that we are leveraging them to make sure that local workers, local businesses, small businesses have a piece of that pie and that money stays here. So, stay involved with us as we move forward. Make sure that you look at those vendor programs and those outreach programs that we have. We just had one recently. I believe it's online. You can watch it now and stay engaged because this truly, the money is coming from the region and should stay in the region.
Thank you, Julie, and welcome again. Looking forward to working with you and seeing what you do on Sound Transit. Folks, this has been an excellent presentation from our elected officials, Executive Summers, Mayor Franklin, and Mayor Frizzell, as well as Julie Tim from Sound Transit. And I just want to thank you all for joining the ASC today and our Coffee Chats efforts. I would like to highlight just a few final slides that we have, just to make sure that people are aware of what's happening. I think coming up on the 9th this week, we actually have the State of the Station. So, and this is going to be presented by the Boeing Company and the Port of Everett. It is tied obviously to Naval Station Everett. Such an amazing impact on the community and 4,000 plus jobs that are created there. So please join us, sign up, Blue Heron Room at the Port of Everett, and that's from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Be there, be square. And then the next item we have to highlight is obviously due to the Bolt Creek fire, there has been a lot of impact in the community, and we would love for folks to join us at the Sky Valley fundraiser. And it's actually in the city of Everett. That's right. And it's going to be at the Angel of Winds area. It's from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And its goal here, similarly, is to support the negative impacts of the Bolt Creek fire. And so to our business community there and others. So November 10th, 5 to 7:30 p.m. Arena Lounge, and it's actually at the Angel of Winds Arena in the city of Everett. Folks, this is what we do at the Coffee Chats. We open up the screen, we grab our coffee mugs and our coffee cups and water or what have you, and we go to full gallery mode. so that we can see everyone. And please, 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 thank you all for joining us today. Have an amazing day. Remember, transportation is helpful to us. We want to make sure that we're supporting everyone. Walkability and better communities is important. So thank you to Executive Summers. Thank you to Mayor Cassie Franklin. Thank you to Mayor Christine Frizzell. Thank you to Julie, Tim, and all of you amazing people. Have an amazing